Have you ever felt kind of trapped by a story? You know, the story of the Garden of Eden is one of the most powerful in the entire Western world. But what if the version we all know, the one about shame and guilt and this huge fall from grace, isn't the only way to tell it? Okay, let's dive into this, because today we are going beyond the garden to find a much more liberating story that's been hiding in plain sight this whole time.
Right, so you have to understand, origin stories are never just stories. They're basically blueprints. They're designed from the ground up to reinforce certain worldviews, certain hierarchies, certain power structures. The Genesis story, for example, it laid out a world with a single, male-coded God and gave humans dominion over nature, which, let's be honest, conveniently supported a temple-run society and, you guessed it, male leadership.
And that just begs the question, doesn't it? If our main creation story is a blueprint, what kind of world has it been building for the last 2,000 years? We're about to dig into the hidden purpose behind this dominant myth. And the answer is, well, it's complicated. So our investigation really starts with a story that most of us know by heart, the story of shame. This is where a simple narrative about a choice in a garden got expertly reframed into this massive cosmic catastrophe, a story of original sin and inherited guilt that has shaped the very bones of our culture. And when you look closer, the contrast is just dramatic. In the original Jewish tradition where Genesis comes from, the idea of original sin just isn't there. It doesn't exist. The story is about a moral awakening, about having the freedom to choose. Being imperfect isn't some permanent stain. It's an invitation to help repair the world. But the Western Christian tradition, it took a hard turn into a story of an inherited curse, a stain so deep it supposedly makes us incapable of being good on our own. So who was the architect of this huge shift? Well, it was largely one man, Augustine of Hippo. Back in the 4th century, he got into these fierce debates, and because of a really critical mistranslation of a key Bible passage into Latin, he cemented this idea that Adam's guilt is biologically passed down to every single human. This one interpretation, based on a flawed translation that changed "because all sinned" to "in whom all sinned," became the bedrock of Western theology for more than 1,000 years.
But a story this powerful is never just about what people believe. It's always serving someone's interests. And that leads us to a really crucial question. Who actually benefits from a narrative built on the idea that all of humanity is inherently shameful and corrupt?
Well, the answer is that a story of shame is the perfect architecture of control. Think about it. If you believe you're fundamentally flawed, you need some external authority, a priest, a king, to tell you how to be good. And then questioning that authority becomes the same as sinning against God himself. The whole system becomes self-policing. People obey because they're afraid for their eternal souls, and the existing social hierarchies get justified as just God's will. It really boils down to this. Sin is weaponized to make sure you comply, and guilt becomes the guard that's installed inside your own head. It's a system of control so effective you don't even need outer walls when the prison is built inside you. But what if we could rewrite the story? The good news is we can. The key is to reclaim the story's main characters from these roles they've been forced to play for centuries. If we reframe them, we can unlock a much more empowering story.
Okay, let's start with Eve. For centuries, she's been the scapegoat, right? The source of all sin, the excuse used to justify the subjugation of women. But in the original text, she's actually the first person to engage in moral reasoning. You could say she's the first theologian. A reclaimed Eve isn't some weak temptress. She's a wisdom bearer, a courageous figure who asserts her own agency to go find knowledge, an act that was later demonized by people who wanted to keep that wisdom locked away.
And what about the serpent? In later tradition, it gets totally fused with Satan, the embodiment of pure evil. But if you look across global myths, the serpent is this incredibly powerful symbol of transformation, of healing, of rebirth. It's the initiator, the catalyst that wakes up our consciousness. And psychologically, it represents the shadow, all the unacknowledged parts of ourselves that hold not just our flaws, but our deepest vitality and our creativity.
So, you see what's happening here? If we reframe the characters, we can discover a brand new path, one that leads not from guilt to punishment, but from our imperfections toward growth. This is what we can call the path of repair.
At the heart of this path is this incredible Jewish mystical concept called tikkun olam, which means repairing the world. This idea just radically reframes our whole purpose. Our imperfections aren't a mistake. They're the very reason we're here. We aren't cursed. We are commissioned to be partners with the divine in mending a fractured world.
And that big external work of repairing the world, it requires the internal work of integrating our shadow. You know, like we just saw with the serpent, the shadow contains all those unacknowledged bits of ourselves. And get this, it's not just the bad stuff. It's often our exiled strengths, our creativity, what one writer calls the pure gold of our personality.
As Robert A. Johnson puts it so beautifully here, this work of integration is a profound spiritual discipline. It's what makes us whole, and in that sense, it's holy. You see, repairing the world and repairing yourself, they're really just two sides of the same coin.
Okay, so this brings us to the final ultimate reframe. What if our purpose isn't to sit around mourning some lost paradise, but to become co-creators in a divine story that's still unfolding? What does it actually mean to live beyond the garden?
Well, first, it requires a whole new understanding of grace. For centuries, we've basically been told that grace is a pardon, like a legal transaction where God, the judge, just cancels our debt of sin.
But there's a much more ancient, mystical way of seeing grace. It's not a static pardon, it's an empowering flow, a dynamic, life-giving divine energy that moves through us, equipping us for that work of repair and creation.
And this, right here, is the ultimate shift in our role. We are no longer passive defendants in some cosmic courtroom, just hoping for a pardon. No, we become active partners, co-workers, channels through which the divine energy of repair and renewal flows into the world. It's not just that God did something for us, it's that God is doing something through us.
And so we end right back where we began, with the power of stories. The story of shame was given to us, designed to control. But it's not the only one out there. So, I'll leave you with this question to think about. If you weren't handed a story of shame at birth, what story of purpose, of creativity, and of repair would you choose to live?